started at the end of 2007, really got going at the beginning of 2008. And our focus was looking at algae for a lot of the exact same reasons that Matt was outlining here. The biofuels industry was really struggling with where they were going to get their feedstock. And so it really became an issue of how can we find alternative feedstocks. And North Carolina's got this great ambitious goal of, by 2017, 10% of our liquid fuels being actually homegrown here in North Carolina. And so how can we reach that goal? It's a tremendous goal when you're talking about, we're over 57 billion gallons. And so 10% of that, 5.7 billion gallons is what we're trying for in 2017. We've got a long way to go. We're just a few million gallons of what we're producing here in North Carolina. And so if we're going to meet those goals, we're really going to have to step it up with lots of alternatives. And I like what Matt said, it's not going to be a bullet. It's not going to be the silver bullet solution. Stephen Burke has said that it's going to be the silver shotgun approach to it. Okay, it's going to be a whole pellet spread here that we've got to attack it with. Because right now, if we use traditional agriculture in any capacity, we could take every acre of farmland that we have right now, convert it all over to feedstocks for biofuels, and still only be a drop in the bucket of what we need to meet these goals. And that's not even meeting our entire need, that's just trying to get to 10% of the need. So tremendous ambition there, and we're really excited about trying to be at least one of the pellets in that shotgun approach. Just to give you a little bit of background, Matt gave you a little background on duckweed. Duckweed is actually an angiosperm, so it's a little bit different than algae. But you're familiar with seeing algae as slime in our ditches and ponds and whatnot. We have a great research facility here for the Center for Marine Science Research that has focused on harmful algal blooms in particular, so red tides and issues with our shellfish industries. Have been something that you may have heard or be familiar with. And then if you just go walk the beach, there's different times when macroalgae or seaweed is in great abundance. And so what we're more focused on is taking a look, we're doing some work with macroalgae as well, but at microalgae. So it's microscopic, very small, so oftentimes single cell algae cells. And there's some challenges with that. Okay, those challenges are, how do we culture just that and control it in some capacity? If you put it out there in those open ponds, you get competition by other native species, so you put one out there that's really rich in fats and lipids, and something jumps in there and outcompetes it, and you've got something else by the time you're ready to harvest. Or, boy, all those little critters, the grazers, when you put something out there with fats and lipids in there, they want to chomp on them, so they're going to eat them up. And so you've got to figure out a way to control these. There's been all kinds of creative ways that have been put out there. You can see everything from plastic bags to, you can guess that this is MIT. They had to get all of their angles correct and do all of their engineering calculations here. And this is a theoretical diagram up here that Solix Biofuels would like to have done with their systems, and I'm not sure they've been able to get the capital, because the problem with these closed systems that allow you more control is the capital that you have to put forward in order to do that on a scale for biofuels. So when you start talking about biofuels, you're talking about a lot of whatever it is, no matter what the feedstock is. And so that's a problem with everything being in a closed system. We're approaching it at Alganomics with a combination. We really feel like you've got to have some control to get the species to be able to get a large inoculum of what you like to culture, but that the open pond and large water volume has to be addressed in some capacity, and a closed system is going to be really difficult to make that economically feasible. Okay. We've started with several grants. I won't read through all of those, but the North Carolina Green Business Fund grant has been substantial. Brunswick Electric has been wonderful in getting us a start. The Biofuels Center, all of those have been integral in us getting started. And so I believe in any of these initiatives with biofuels, you've got to collaborate. You've got to bring folks in. You've got to get some help to really make it go forward. So we've been really fortunate. We appreciate all of the help that we've gotten. The very first project that we've started is actually on the town of Oak Island property. It's actually before you go over to the island, if you're familiar with down in that region. And they have the Oak Island Biological Treatment Plant. And it also has a really nice ball field and park beside it. It used to be called Reuse Park. They've renamed it. But it's because all of the reused water is spread on the park to grow the grass and beautiful fields fields for the children to play on in the community. So really fortunate to have that right there, and a grant actually supplied them with that park and that facility there. They also have a golf course that they spread some of that reused water on. We're there because of a lot of the same reasons that Matt introduced you to, okay? It's not waste. It's not wastewater. It's water that has resources in it that we're not using. And you hear a lot about petroleum, not so much about phosphates even. We're going to reach peak mining for phosphates as well. And so we've really got to think about how can we better use our resources in lots of different capacities. And that's why we're at a wastewater treatment facility. Everything that we're using with our algae culturing and in our systems is reused water from the facility. So it's got an increased nutrient with it. We do add additional nutrients with it as well. So we're trying to work towards further up the line with the wastewater, but you run into bacterial issues too. So there's a happy medium with what we're trying to do. This is our system that we have for our closed system, photobioreactors. We've got one small system. The one you see in the front is about a 1,000-gallon capacity, and the one in the back is about a 10,000-gallon capacity as far as the photobioreactor goes. We've got several things that we've had to address with it. One of them is just simply cleaning. You've got those really nice clear acrylic tubes, and so how do you get in there when the algae gets on there and clean it up? So we have a pig system that actually comes through, and that's what this picture is here. The pig system runs through the pump. The water pump just literally pushes it through, and it does a beautiful job of keeping things clean and trying to reduce a lot of the labor and man hours that go along with that. So we really had an adventure in getting our photobioreactor system to work. And again, that's the inoculant for a large pond system. So if we've got a pond that needs to be filtered, you've got to have some serious equipment to get in there and actually filter it out. And that's been a problem with algae, is it's more energy intensive to actually filter and get the algae out of there than the energy that you're getting off of it. So you've really got to get an energy balance going on too. We decided that we wanted to be at more research facilities than just at this wastewater treatment plant. We wanted to be able to go out to hog waste lagoons. We wanted to go to different pond systems and be able to do some of the filtration portion of it. This is using a lot of traditional types of methods that wastewater treatment plants have used for a long, long time. They had to deal with biosolids in large volumes of water for a long time. And so we've tried to learn lessons from how they handle large volumes of water. And this is really a dissolved air flotation type of system that we've adjusted and simply put it on wheels. So we could go to any pond and any system. And the lower trailer that you see is really for doing some of the extraction component of it, being able to literally get the algae to a paste component of it and get the oil out of the algae. We're working on an inline system of actually bursting the cells. It's been a huge issue of how do you get the oil out of the cells. You've got all these great algae cells. They're small and hard to deal with, but how do you get the oil out of them in an energy efficient manner? And so we're working on an inline system that as the water comes into these trailer systems, you're actually bursting the cells, and then you've got to go through a traditional oil-water separation technique in order to get your oil from it. We've got a mobile laboratory as well, so we kept everything on wheels. We can go to different places. We also feel like that initially from the research end of it, we may need to focus more on the environmental remediation than on the biofuel component. And so we've been over to Ballhead Island. They have some unsightly ponds that they were worried about their algae. They really could care less what we do with the algae. They just want us to clean their ponds. Greenfield Lake up here, anybody seen it? They dump chemicals in it to keep it controlled. And so how can we do that in a better manner, a more environmentally friendly manner? And so we would love to work with our extraction system in different places like that. So we're working on culturing different species. We've found that it's better to work with polycultures versus monocultures. You've got a lot less issues with it crashing. That just means that there's more than one species there. And that's what nature does. Nature does never fill a pond with just one thing. Okay, and so there's a balance there. We really feel like that algae does that. We're not using any genetically modified organisms. We are really focused on what is natively available, and that's what he was focused on with duckweed is, hey, it's right here. We've got an abundance of it. Let's use that resource. Okay, some other value-added product to really make the business model work. And so that has to really strongly be looked at. One of the companies that's just come out with an IPO, Petroalgae, $200 million IPO.
Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, and has a real misnomer there. It's called Petroalgae, and they're really doing duckweed, okay, which is not algae, and they're really focused, their business model is focused on animal feed, so it's not focused on biofuel even. And so it's kind of interesting how some of the business plans are having to come together and even adapt, because clearly that was not where they started, and even adapt to make the numbers work. One of the folks we're collaborating with, Clearwater Enterprises, they're up in White Lake, and Mr. David Clark, he's a really interesting character. He is one of the owners of Samson Blade and Oil, and he says, happiness is a positive cash flow. And so I'm learning business. As a scientist, I'm learning business, and that seems like the ground floor right there. That covers it. And so trying to figure out how to make it work. I'm just briefly, for those who may not be familiar, how you get oil from algae. That just seems kind of odd. You get oil from algae. It's a plant, and it's an agricultural process. And so you need your water and your nutrients just the same. And algae has a tremendous growth capacity as well. Some can double their biomass in 6 hours. Some take 4 or 5 days to do it. So it's very species dependent as far as their growth rate goes. And that makes making business models tough, because you've got so many variables going on there. But then you're going to, in some form or fashion, have to get that algae and the oil, if you've already burst the cells, out of a tremendous mass of water. It's tons and tons of water to deal with. And so that's been a real hurdle for folks on how to deal with that. There's lots of methods of extracting the oil. It's really not much different than us getting vegetable oil from other plants. And so a lot of the traditional methods are used for the extraction. And even the separation techniques to go into other. You see some of the other value-added byproducts. There's a company called Cereplast that's really focusing on algae going to bioplastics, and so that could be a value-added byproduct. The animal feeds seem to be something a lot of folks are focusing on. And there's a great report that's just recently come out in this research, and that is when supplements of algae were fed to cattle. I think they were focusing on dairy cattle. It reduced the methane that was produced. Okay, think about that a minute. The methane produced by the cattle, yeah, that's flatulation, right? Okay, and they didn't even hide, the article's great to read, because it's this really in-depth scientific journal article, and it's talking about cow farts. Okay, and reducing algae significantly reduced those methane production at large dairy farms. And that's not a minor thing. If you study a little bit about our greenhouse gases, okay, cattle are a big issue when it comes to greenhouse gases. So that can have a significant positive impact there. I can't help but think about it. Poor grad student. How'd you like to be that grad student from that when I was a summer or two? Okay. Okay. And so part of the problem we see is a need for investment. So Petroalgae is one who's actually going to a Korea-based firm and getting some of their funding. Some of these other companies going to Israel, Australia, and so a lot of the funding, instead of being supported right here in the United States, we're seeing the technology development and it moving forward in foreign countries. And so we really need to, I think, get the word out of how significant and important it is for lots of different reasons that Matt also outlined. Let's decentralize fuel sources. Let's get them homegrown. That's why the legislature thought it was so important for us to actually set those goals as the state of North Carolina. And utilize all of those really important resources, not waste. Okay? And down at the bottom it says, just doing the right thing. Okay, everybody feels good about doing the right thing. So how can we put it all together? And I think that's right. You're going to have to collaborate. You're going to have to look at, should we be connecting not only to wastewater treatment facilities, but maybe looking at aquaculture and fish farming. And so how do we use the nutrients that are coming from the fish and those sources for algae and make a really holistic kind of approach to doing this. So I'm probably at my limit too, so I'll end things up, but I would love to have discussions with folks about this. I get really excited about the potential.